Winston just wiped his nose on me like, hello, good morning, I'm here. Hi.
Jeffrey
No.
Bezos.
This-
Jeffrey Bezos.
so we have we sit here because we stream this, and there's just like a couple minutes where we just
Banter.
start talking about nothing.
I was singing a song.
Yes.
Lynette's like, you've been singing that song
He
for
has
several
been
days.
singing the same song for several days.
Then there was a non sequitur to, hey, when does
I don't
New
know
World
how-
come out? And then I
I
was
don't know
like,
how we
what if
got
I
to-
name my
oh.
character Jeffrey Bezos?
Yes, we were talking about Amazon, and that's how Jeffrey Bezos came up.
Yeah.
So yes, and then also shout out to Bo Burnham for that song that will never
Never not be good.
never not be sung in this house.
Just brilliant. It's just
Well, it helps that
magnificent.
your name is Jeff also. So
Yes,
and
it
I'm
does.
just like, come on, Jeffrey.
It
you
naturally
can
comes
do
into
it.
the brain. Yeah, no, for sure it does. Yes.
So are we keeping this in here, or are we starting? Hello.
Hello.
How is it going?
It's going great. I have this book that I want to
Oh my
not
gosh.
hesitate to show
We have
off,
to show this off.
which is amazing.
So as we said before, Jeff's birthday was last week, and Harmony Bells
Yes.
and Dabby Doo, Jerry and David were kind enough to send Jeff this lovely, beautiful, gorgeous birthday present. It's the first book of Harry Potter, and it's designed and illustrated by Mina Lema. And this was one of their more recent. I actually was following the development of this book on Instagram because they'd post little things. But there's like pop-ups and pull-outs. So this is Diagon Alley that Jeff is showing. And there's like all sorts of interactive paper-based activities in here. Isn't it?
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it's so beautiful.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
It has a really nice feel.
There's
the
a Harry
cover.
Potter letter in there.
Very, very nice.
There's also one I was skimming through. There's one with the fat lady, and it's like classic pop-up book or picture book where you can like move the eyes, and so the eyes are just going like back and forth, left to right. So super, super, it's amazing. So thank you, Jerry and David.
When I first opened it,
Uh-huh.
as you know, I love books very much. So
Yeah.
I'm like kind of looking at it before I had even fully undone the plastic wrap. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh no, is there like something wrong with it? And Lynette was like, I think it's a pop-up book. And I'm like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's a pop-up book. And then
Yeah,
I was
'cause
like,
you can see like there's like little
there's gaps like in the pages.
book.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, like what happened? But then, my brain was having difficulty processing it because I'm like, that isn't really a thing that happens to books. It doesn't make any sense for the pages to open like that. And then I was like, it's a pop-up book.
yeah,
It's so amazing.
it's amazing. Great, great gift. Better than the gift I gave, which was nothing.
Well, it's an air fryer to
be purchased.
I'm still
We have
still
to
comparison
find
shopping.
the right one.
I gotta get the right one. The right size is really important to me.
There are many things to know about air fryers, apparently.
There are
and
a significant variety.
There's
of
a
them.
lot that apparently Google has all the information and everyone's perspective ever. So like there's a lot of, mismatch between what people advise and then the marketing pictures for buying air fryers.
Yeah, agreed. Yes. So
what?
I tend to go off Amazon, or off wherever I'm like, not those reviews. Like I want like a blog. So I've looked at a few blogs.
Yeah.
Because
do any of your chef people use air fryers? Do they have
Jacques Pepin?
hashtag sponsorships or
I don't think
recommendations?
so.
Okay.
There was a long time where Marco Pierre White, who's quite a famous chef, was sponsored by oh my gosh, I'm gonna not remember, but it's basically a stock company.
Okay.
And all of these videos of him from like the mid 90s making recipes and always add Nor's Stockpot. Nor's
Nor's,
K-N-O-R-S. Yeah. He was sponsored by them. And so like
chicken
every
bouillon
recipe, it was like beef stock or chicken bouillon. Yeah.
It's
It was
like, why are you
magnificent.
holding it like this?
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
He has such an interest. If you're ever like gonna get in, you're gonna test the waters on watching professional chef YouTube videos, I would watch Marco Pierre White.
Yeah.
Because he's just, although Jacques Pepin is also they're very zen. They have like a very direct, you can just sense the knowledge. It just oozes off of them. The ease with which they do this stuff. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I've just followed, actually, after I roasted the chicken, not this one that I just did, but the one before. We used the leftovers to make like a pastryless chicken pot pie. So it's like a
Yeah.
chicken pot pie soup essentially.
Mhm.
And though we've made that soup before, I came into my mind to use leftovers because of Jacques Pepin, and mine did not turn out as good as his.
Well,
I
practice.
can sense it.
You have to practice.
I do practice, but not 70 years. I was watching an interview with him. I was just like, it's a YouTuber, so it's like a millennial or Gen Z host. They're talking about it's all the knife skills. So they're cutting all these different things, and at some point the YouTuber just like stops and just watches him. Like at first it's like, kind of not a competitive, but like I'm gonna show my stuff. And then at some point they're like, and when did you start? And he was like, I was 14. It was 71 years ago. And the guy's like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Welcome to the cooking podcast here.
Well, it's the intro. You never know.
Yeah.
That's what makes it good. That's what makes a good intro.
Okay.
Conan O'Brien.
Even though summer is officially ending, I guess. I don't know the official end date of summer. I am excited for fall TV back in the swing. So we've been watching The Circle, which on Netflix, it's been chunking out like 4 episodes a week until the finale, where it's just like 1 episode. And then I was scrolling through. Actually, I've seen ads for this because sometimes we watch Hulu because it's part of our Spotify package.
Yep.
And we usually watch Family Guy only. Like we haven't explored, although that Britney documentary we watched on Hulu. But this thing kept popping up, and it's called Only Murders in the Building, and it caught my eye because Selena Gomez is in it alongside Steve Martin and Martin Short, which I was just like, what could this possibly be?
Yeah.
I don't know why you 3 humans would be together, but
no, it's great.
It's a great show.
It's really good.
It's kind of structured like a whodunit murder mystery as a TV series, but I love the way it's framed because basically the 3 of them are obsessed with this true crime podcast. And there's a murder that happens in their building, like literally. And so like each episode is framed by like they decided to start this podcast. Well, actually, no, Martin Short pushed the other 2 to start this podcast.
Yeah.
And so now they're like actually doing this true crime podcast about a murder that happened in their building. It's really funny. Well, not really funny. There's like funny moments. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's a great show. I don't know how to describe it. And one of the executive producers is the same person for This Is Us as well. Yeah.
The whole thing is kind of oscillates in this funny way between comedy and actual drama. Like it's an actual murder. So like and then there's like deep, like emotional desire. I got the most chills when we finished episode 1. There's a reveal at the end of episode 1, and I could feel it. It was just like flowing down my back, and I was like, we gotta watch episode 2.
Yeah. I love, so it reminds me a little of Knives Out because like the way that you tell stories and the way you reveal things, like it's very different to have development of so now this is turning into a Only Murders in the Building review, where you just like reveal, a lot of stuff is like, especially with movies, although this is a TV show, the nice thing about TV is that you get the depth of a character.
Slower.
And so like it's not just in this moment you have just what's happening. You're doing callbacks, and then like your initial impression of the characters still maintain true, but then they get like more complex, which is actually it's common for like or similar to a great book as well, like the way that characters like become complex even though you kind of just meet them.
Well, they actually had in one of the episodes they were talking about layers of an onion, and I feel that but it's layering. That's the difference between Knives Out and this show. I mean, obviously they have different tones somewhat too, but they're both murder mysteries. But in Knives Out, you have to like it's iceberg all the way, where it's like you have to caricature everyone so that you get a sense of who they actually are.
Yeah.
But in here, it's like they just layer.
So if you like This Is Us, I would say because it's a similar structure, I feel like, and so it's not surprising because the guy who made This Is Us is like involved in this. So, shall we? We've spent like 10 minutes talking.
Gosh, I don't have my wand.
You don't have your wand. Where's your wand? It's right there. I see it. I see
I
it.
don't think I can get it.
Oh no. Okay.
It's okay.
Jeff has a wand.
You
It's
can do
there.
magic without a wand.
Okay. Yeah. Wand's ready.
Okay, turn to page 50. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes.
Uh-huh.
Today's lesson is called When Harry Met Bill and Charlie. The chapter begins with Harry popping out of the fireplace and into the burrow. Fred and George ask research questions about their Ton-Tongue Toffee as Mr. Weasley arrives and lectures them on muggle-wizard relations. Harry meets Bill and Charlie, and Mrs. Weasley insists that the twins' work on joke magic should stop. Harry reconnects with Ron, Hermione, and Ginny, and they see Percy working away at his new job at the Ministry, begging for quiet. Life at the Burrow is crowded but comfortable, enough that Harry essentially forgets about his scar hurting and his letter to Sirius. The Quidditch World Cup looms, as does some other event that Percy drops hints about.
What is the name of the Shire? I was like, because I saw like
Okay.
the Burrows, and I was like, oh wait, the typo,
I made a typo.
but I was like, oh wait, is that what is the Lord of the Rings thing? The Shire. Never mind, ignore me.
Bag
Anyway.
end.
Yeah, there were a lot of like, I love being with the Weasleys because there's so many of them, and they're all their full personalities.
Yep.
I kind of wondered like, how do you, I mean, I guess you can like write about things that you don't have personal experience with, but it made me wonder about like J.K. Rowling's family or just like who she's had interactions with. Like, did she know someone like the Weasleys or whatever?
Big family or something.
Yeah, because that's a lot of people to keep track of and then stay like authentic to their like who they are.
Well, what's critical is the
wavering.
relationships, and that's why it becomes so complicated to have a big family like this, because it's interesting too, because in essence, like, we just left the Dursleys, which are a smaller family, but their dynamic is fairly simple, right?
so
It's
boring.
3v1.
Yeah.
And here it's like much more complicated, much more interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I love this idea. Harry's inner monologue when he meets Bill,
Yes.
I've always enjoyed so much.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. That's why I came in and I was just double checking. I was like, Bill's the oldest, right? Because I could imagine like, so there's this like subtle, to me, this is just my interpretation, like a subtle nod to being like, oh, well, you know, firstborn children are probably like me, sticks in the mud, not sticks in the mud, but just like all on top of like,
Cool.
I need to like be in charge or do all this stuff or whatever. And
he was not like that.
Yeah, it was interesting that because he was thinking that Bill would be like Percy, who is very much that stick in the mud for a lot of things, or just takes himself very seriously.
Yes,
and then meeting Bill, which is like basically the complete opposite, and is just because I also was like, wait, I guess they didn't meet Charlie. They were just like talking about Charlie when they did the whole
it was a letter.
Norbert thing.
I think they got a letter from him about how they're picking up the dragon or whatever.
Yeah. So the first time that I like the title, When Harry Met Bill and Charlie.
I wanted to do an alliterative title with W, but I just couldn't get there.
Yeah. That's okay. It works out.
Then I was like, hey, Harry met Bill and Charlie. And I was like, hey. Yeah, Charlie too is also fun. Like, it's interesting. I noted in my mind this time around, book Fred and George are supposed to be short because Harry says that Ron, Percy, and Bill are tall and lanky.
Yes.
Charlie, Fred, and George are short and stockier.
Well, I wonder, I mean, because I also had a reaction to that too, and I was like, oh, well, it's not the twins in the movie.
Yeah, the actors are quite tall.
Yeah. I also wrote that exact quote down in my notes. Bill there was no other way to say it. Cool.
Yeah.
It's like the earring with the fang, which later on Molly's just kind of like, blah, 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 why are you wearing that? Do they take you seriously?
I'm pretty sure that earring gets a callback later in the book. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure.
With Fleur?
With Fleur.
Oh,
I think it's the earring. Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
exciting. Yeah, there's a lot of okay, so basically we get to the Burrow, everyone
Mm.
gets to the Burrow.
Mm.
Arthur comes in and he's just like he's livid. He's
Yeah.
like, "How? Why? How?"
Yeah.
And there's like it's much more than just bringing your chaos to other people, but it's specifically he said something about like I spent like so much of my time
Yeah.
advocating for, or against the mistreatment of
Yeah.
Muggle. Like he
Yeah,
takes
right.
it in a very serious
Yes, he
direction, and they're
does.
kind of like, "That's not it at all." And we're just,
It doesn't have to do with him being a muggle. It has to do with him being a jerk.
hmm
Yeah.
And then,
And also it was just like that classic, like, I didn't give it to
yeah,
him.
no, that part I'm just like, okay, buddy,
Mhm.
you knew what was happening. You knew what you were doing. But then Molly's there,
But
and then
Dudley
you're
does,
just like,
he needs a little bit of responsibility.
Dudley
If
does.
somebody drops candy on my floor, I'm not going to pick it up and just pop it in
I
there.
would. Would you pick up the candy and eat it? I would. It looks like a normal little toffee.
Yeah.
Why would I think, although
Just offer
even
it back
though
to them.
they're
Hey,
like
you dropped it.
terrified of these wizards,
Yeah.
they're just gonna eat the candy. I don't know.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so Molly's also there and she's kind of like, oh, what's because basically Arthur was trying to make an empty threat
Yes.
and Molly is actually there.
Yes.
And because he's
It
like,
was
I'm gonna tell
perfect.
your mother and all
Tell
this
me what.
stuff. And yeah.
Oh, hello, Harry, dear. Tell me what.
And then Hermione's trying to like give a subtle hint to Ron, being like, "Hey, Ron, why don't you show Harry
Go.
where he's sleeping?" And Ron just oblivious is like, he knows where he's sleeping. Blah, blah, blah. It's just all of those little one-line dynamics are so fun.
There's also, yes, that 100%. There's also something knowing we live right now. This book, this scene exists in this moment in time where because we know all this stuff that comes after, it's like this is the Weasley family in this perfect little bubble. And even though they're having all these disputes, it's like that thing with in the office, like I wish somebody could have told me what were the good old days. And like this is one of those. I'm sure every member of that family would look back at this weekend and be like,
yeah,
this was amazing. Everyone is here. Everyone is happy. Everyone is healthy.
Yeah.
All these things haven't transpired that are about to.
It's very interesting because Harry kind of alludes to that. Well, I don't think he knows, but like through Harry, it's kind of alluded because he's just like taking it all in.
Well, he has the contrast that they don't.
Yes.
And they're about to have that contrast. Unfortunately for them, it comes after this moment instead of before. Because there's something like we as readers, I think, have an opportunity because we're rereading this. We gain the perspective of like, look at the pettiness. Look at some of the pettiness, right? From Fred and George sending Percy dragon poop in his office. They all give him a hard time, but he is also petty about his work when he should be enjoying. He will have a reckoning involving he should have spent more time with his family. And then even something more simple like Molly worrying about Fred and George, not understanding what the future could hold for them and not recognizing like that is such a beautiful relationship at this moment because it's so realistic. You can see where she's coming from, but she's misunderstanding. She isn't, it's not possible to have a full understanding of people, even if you're related to them. So she's misunderstanding why they're pursuing this thing and what value could be in there.
Well, part of it is interesting. Like, it's so complicated. So there's like little lines in there. They didn't get as many OWLs as she expected. There's like all sorts of stuff related to, and this is in many stories and many real life experiences when like famous people talk about their relationship with what they try to pursue. Many famous people in the entertainment industry, when they talk about their experiences with wanting to pursue something, but trying to navigate their own parents' expectations for what they think they should be doing. And it comes from a well-meaning place where it's like, well, this is like a, good paying job, it's stable, it's like, and you're smart enough to do it. Like, I see that potential.
Yeah.
But what you don't see, this is like the kind of the tension between generations, is what you don't see is what, from our positionality, I'm going to group us and say that we're going to Hogwarts with them, that they have something that doesn't exist yet, or not necessarily in a way that they could bring to life. Because I mentioned last week about the entrepreneurship and stuff that is not already, laid out, like this is a pathway for you, which is all, I'm not all, but a lot of the OWL stuff is there. I would imagine at Hogwarts, people would be like, oh, well, you could be X profession or this profession. Like, it's not that people are going to be like, yeah, you could just be a small business owner and create something that didn't exist before, Yeah. So there's a lot of tension with wanting the best for your children, but also like there's a lot of complicated stuff there, because they are actually using their strengths and their knowledge and their their smarts and all of that.
At least I think culturally we understand that there tends to be a generational conflict, and what that conflict between loving relationships, and what that conflict often looks like to me is risk aversion versus passion. So you have somebody, the younger person, Fred and George in this conversation, who have a passion, and that passion doesn't have an obvious path, as you're talking about.
Yeah.
And therefore it comes in conflict with somebody who says, but there are these existing pathways, just do these. And I think it causes a lot of strife, because people really go through this process where it's like, well, I think about how many people regret something about, like, I should have done this, or I should have done it earlier, or what have you. And like most of the time it's because the person chooses the risk averse path instead of following the passion.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, so the thing I kept thinking about related to this is that, so they are inventing all these things. Like, they are literally inventing them.
Yeah.
But like, the Weasley family is so large. Like, you have people who work in the ministry. Like, why don't you consult them and be like, okay, we want to do these things. How can we do it so it's like not entirely illegal, or how we can mitigate risk or something like that? Even though they probably don't, because they probably wouldn't get any, like, you have to be on board if you're going to have a collaborative sort of like consulting type experience like that. But I think that the Weasleys could just like they have enough people and enough like people, they are within their family, they're so different that they could just have this whole operation and be like one of the top wizarding families. Although we do know the Weasleys also, and their demeanor is not that sort of
they're
way.
Midwestern.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, live and let live. I'm gonna live in the Burrow, and we love each other, and you're our neighbor, and we like you too, but you do you, right? It makes sense when we find out that they live near the Lovegoods. Similar kind of live, well, different type of live and let live, I think. But I would say like the Weasleys are just so realistic. It is such a grounded family, despite like the wizard magic like being involved. It's such an obvious, it feels obvious. It feels like, oh yeah, that is what the dad would say, that is what the mom would say, given what I know about them. Like, yeah. What's even amazing to me is like how pinpoint correct all of the Weasley Wizarding Wheezes process goes. Like, we will follow this for a couple of years now, and like there's all these developments in this book. There's huge developments with funding and all of this, and like everything that happens, it's like, oh yep, no, of course. And like here, like they even she drops in this chapter the inventory list with prices. This is that's serious work. This is not casual. It wasn't just for fun.
Yeah.
Because Ron even says we thought they just liked making noise.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's great. I love it.
That's why it's so interesting. And I think that, I mean, obviously we don't have kids, so like I don't know, like I'm not far enough, like, or in that sort of mindset that would be closer to Molly than I'm closer to the sense making of Fred and George at this point. But for Molly to be thinking that they have no ambition, like it's just so, and I think that the reason I brought up of like, oh, it's something that doesn't exist yet, like that's the only reasonable explanation, is that it's not, or maybe not even that, but like outside the realm of your lived experiences and knowledge. So Molly probably doesn't know people who like started their own business and like what that sort of process is like or takes or anything like that. So it's reasonable for her to think that the way that they are acting is not ambitious, or that the fact that they actually, I didn't even go to the whole OWLs thing and like what is that supposed assessment actually saying, that the twins didn't get as many OWLs. Like I don't know. There's a lot that mirrors or parallels our world. Obviously, our existing world doesn't have to be just the wizarding world.
Yes.
But that's what makes these stories so relatable.
Well, we are teachers.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think something that's true is there is a difficult to analyze, or even, I don't know, there's a thing that's, I'll call, for lack of a better word, fire. Like people have fire, inner fires, passions, things that drive them, and you can sense it when you're nearby. If you're a teacher, I think we're professionally trained. If we're good, if we're in tune with the larger mission of teaching, maybe we have a sense of like, what is it that really this person, it's strengths-based stuff, but it's also passion-based stuff. So it's like, what is going to fulfill them? I think a research around this might be like eudaimonia, which is like a self-realization, self-actualization type of thing. And with Fred and George, it's clear that they have a deep drive. It's just not like always culturally welcome.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like in school, their deep drive to entertain and subvert and kind of enjoy life is often set aside, like juxtaposed with strictness or sadness. I mean, we even see, isn't it the first book, I believe it is, when they do the funeral march? Yeah, and Dumbledore gets up and...
You said something in a Magical Theory episode from book 1 where you talked about, I feel like you talked about that, and you talked about like who they are and like why it is potentially that they became those people within the context of their family. And yeah, I think it's this is a great chapter, especially to, I mean, Fred and George are always there, but like they grow like in the way that the overall series evolves. And it must be great. I would have loved to hear their little, because they're twins. It's not that it, I mean, maybe easier is not the right word, but if you have another person who's like on board with your wild idea, that like, I'm sure it was a lot of fun to try to come up with the inventory list and prices and like have this vision and dream. Oh, Winnie's hair is flying. Of something that could be that you could have a partner in crime to come to life.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. Other things. Percy. We haven't talked about Percy.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, I feel bad for him that everyone's making fun of him. And he's just so into it. But on the other, like as someone who at some point in my life was very, very similar to Percy, just like obsessed with work and like all this stuff and being like, no, this is like, I'm going to put every fiber of my being into something like this, and knowing that you can't sustain that. I also feel for him, where I'm just like, oh man,
Oh, yes.
you gotta chill out. It's okay. It's fine.
He, like Fred and George, but for very different reasons, is like incredibly relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's somebody who is trying to also stand out, but he does it. His approach is by the book.
Yeah.
He takes what is in front of him very seriously. He's going to do this well, very well.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to exceed expectations.
Yeah.
But then there's also this very some of the baggage that comes along with it for him is he's extremely judgmental.
Yes.
You go through this chapter, everything is about judgment.
Yeah.
Gotta be faster than this person. Ludo Bagman, of course he's likable. Bertha Jorkins, she's missing like
well, this is the hardest part about being a person or living in a society where people have different contributions to the world.
Yeah.
Based on whether or not you're using your strengths or not. Like, and so there's this inevitable like attempts of hierarchy because part of on both directions of how other people view you and how you view your work and your contribution, and how sometimes, like, especially if you feel like you are contributing, like he's like obsessed with this cauldron thing, and Ron's like just brushing it off like this isn't important, and then Percy explains like this is what could happen, which is funny because I kept thinking about like government and like the whole sort of thing about like, oh well, no one
regulations,
well nobody or just like the sort of when government works, like it's hard to like just be like, yeah, you did it. Like it's more when it doesn't work, then you can point at it and you notice. But like, yeah, can you imagine if Percy didn't do any of this or wasn't part of this team to regulate this, and then you had this like catastrophe, then so there's all this sort of stuff. Then you would have people pointing at the Ministry of Magic and being like, why can't you get your stuff together? What if a kid at Hogwarts
gets burned to death?
Yeah.
So I think exactly. I think it's the conflict between something being boring but something being important, which is we live this conflict so much, right? We like, just because something is boring doesn't mean that it's not crucial. Absolutely crucial. It's not going to get front page headlines. It has no PR service. Like, it's just is a thing that needs to be done. And something like, if you're going to have a functional society, and it's not just that one thing, it's millions of little things that everyone does. It's the unsung hero, right? And never going to get any attention unless something goes horribly wrong. And then they're like, well, why did this building collapse? Oh, you did something wrong. And it's like, well, maybe we should celebrate like the everyday mundane things that we do to help each other out that don't get any sort of attention.
And it's not that Percy needs like praise. It's just this sort of like the fact that other things get praise. I mean, connecting it back to Fred and George, they are doing things that are not getting, I think, the recognition or appreciation that it deserves.
Exactly. And a lot of it is just listening. I'm certain that when they got called out and they had this book of prices, they were like, no, we're serious. We're going to go do this. We're serious about the joke shop. And just like nobody really listens to Percy, they have the bullet point of like, oh, you're working on the cauldron thing. It's like, well, what is he doing? Like, what is he actually doing? Nobody listens to him, right? Yeah. I don't know, maybe his dad. I feel like at some point we hear like Bill or somebody talking to him about it in a more serious way, which probably is fulfilling to him. But
yeah, the way I read the exchange with Bill and Percy was more kind of like Bill was being kind. I feel like he was being kind, obviously more kind than Ron, but also probably because he is the oldest, of just trying to kind of be like, oh, well, I felt this sort of like wanting Percy to be like, just let it go for a second. It's okay. Like, come join us, come be part of this.
A couple of good comments about Percy moving forward. And I think I agree. I mean, he's not my favorite.
Percy
but I think
needs
a way
society
of
to
seeing
collapse.
where he goes
Yeah.
is that he likely, if I'm going to try to put on my empathy at maximum, it's that he likely thinks nobody in his family cares about him.
Mm.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So it's easy for him to sever the ties. I mean, it's not easy. It's easier. It is
Yes.
most likely for him to be the person that severs ties. Like, who cares? Nobody cares about me anyway. So I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting because part of it is like thinking about, you know, who Percy. I mean, we have outside of this talked about. I mean, everyone kind of, you know, nature nurture, like that sort of thing of how much of Percy, like being arrogant, like is just who he is or how he's always seen himself, and how much is, and it's not quantifiable. I'm just using that colloquially. How much is like shaped by these relationships within his family that kind of leads him to be this way, just as Fred and George are the entertainers of the family. And I imagine that, you know, of course, one is going to be more likable than the other because I imagine even if Fred and George are serious, I don't think that they would, you know, cause a fuss about it. They would probably do it in private or laugh it off as a joke or something. Whereas Percy seems to be more sort of or his reaction would probably be more defensive and like, I don't know.
Ego-based.
Yeah, ego-based. Whereas the twins, I feel like, could navigate that in a different way that make them seem much more likable than
the
Percy.
Twins are really interesting because when we watch them, it's like they're just going to do it. But they're not going to sacrifice anything. They're going to problem solve it. It's, yeah, they're very interesting. But at the same token of like, Fred and George leave school easily, somewhat easily, right? They drop out of school. And why? Well, could they not also think nobody here cares about us? It doesn't matter. None of these teachers actually, they don't even like us.
Yeah.
And we don't like this, you know? And so there's these interesting parallels, even though they're so different. I mean,
they are.
They're really, really different.
This is like a very minor thing, but something I was wondering is why, I don't know if this is like talked about later. Why is Percy living with the Weasleys?
I don't think, is he? Is he living there?
I think he is, because they were like, oh, his bedroom. So I guess my question was like, why is he not, if he works at the ministry, right? Did he graduate already? Or is he still? Yeah. Why doesn't he have his own house?
Well, he might. He might just be there because they're going to the thing.
Right. But like Charlie doesn't live with them.
Right.
Bill doesn't live with them, I think. Doesn't Bill live in a different country?
No, they don't live there.
Yeah.
That's why they have Fred and George's bedroom.
Yeah. And so I guess this is Percy's first job, so I'm going to like,
he may still be living there.
It made me wonder if it was like Molly and Arthur that were like, oh no, you should stay with us, or how that worked out. And if that also provides another source of tension for Percy and his family, just living there as well. And continuing on and being like, okay, I have a real job, I'm doing some important things, and then constantly getting sort of dismissed or ignored or whatever. Yeah. Although I do wonder Molly seems to think highly of Percy.
I think so too.
A job at the ministry.
Well, yes, and Molly's going to be the one that takes it the hardest.
Yes.
Because they are somewhat close to each other. It feels like they're quite close. Because he and she have something quite in common. They have a kind of detail-oriented like concern for what's going to happen next. And it's very tragic because it's super real. And like that's why this chapter is just so much, this whole book is like this weird transitional thing where it's like, look at how lovely peace can be. Oops, you didn't know how important that was.
Yeah. So, Molly does love Harry very much. She does love Harry. All the children. Yeah. I love the Weasleys.
Not to mention, to put a button on this, it's fascinating to know what we know about what it is that bridges the gap, and then how tragic that moment actually is for Percy and the family, and that it's one of the twins, and like in their contrast and in their lives, like when okay, spoilers,
Spoilers.
when Fred dies, and
Oh.
Percy is there for the first time in a year plus.
Yeah.
There's something very very real about it, because it doesn't care who these people are anymore. In this moment, you have such a clear perspective on what matters, and it's
Yes.
like, oh well, wow, you know. And of course, it's one of the twins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One last note on Percy. So he works in the Department of International Magical Cooperation, which I was like, I know that department. I mean, when this came out in Wizards Unite, when this department came up in a title,
Who's that?
I was like, wait, what is this department? I don't know much about this department. Oh yeah, Percy worked there. So Edward Scott, spoiler alert for Wizards Unite, we later found out was actually Gareth Greengrass in disguise. The title was Lead Liaison Minister, which makes no sense. And also, I'm sorry, Hermione Granger, if you are the Minister of Magic, actually. How do you not know who these people are? Like, it just... I can't with this story.
Well, to be fair, I don't think President Biden knows every staff member of the government.
But you should know the supposed liaison.
It depends on if a lead liaison minister is actually near the top or not.
But but if it's the liaison, like, internationally, you would have to. Well, okay, I guess, but you would have to at least have like a roster of which I guess Gareth could also falsify. A roster of here are the important international business people you need to speak with.
I don't know if you know this, but a Facebook was, and maybe still is, a congressional Facebook. And it used to be like pictures of all 435 Congress people.
Like my class restaurant canvas.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah. Now Facebook is something else.
Yeah. Lead liaison minister.
Lead liaison minister.
I'm just going to say it's probably a fake job. I don't know. I don't know.
You're a liaison and a minister.
I don't know. We also got some names. You mentioned them. Ludo Bagman and Bertha Jorkins. So, well,
missing for a month.
So side note with Ludo Bagman, we watched this YouTube video. It was called Odd One Out, or what was it called? Odd One Out or something like that. I don't know. I'll look for it and post it on Discord. But basically, it's like a group of humans and they're together. It's a social deduction game where you try to find the person who's trying to be an imposter for something. So whether it's like this one, the first one we watched was find the fake Harry Potter fan. Like you have 6 real Harry Potter fans and one who is a fake
coached.
Yeah, they're coached. They're not a real Harry Potter fan. One of the questions that they asked each other was, who is Ludo Bagman? Like, do you remember that in like one of the rounds? And I don't remember who they asked, and I think that they got it wrong. But to be honest, I probably would also get it wrong. I'd be like, I know this name. I know that they're important in some way.
You're going to remember it after this because
I
of
will
this,
remember.
The pacing of our reading.
Yes, one chapter at a time, I'll commit it to memory. A big gambling.
The bag, man. Holding the bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bertha Jorkins is missing. So that's good.
I love the thing where it's just like, oh, Ludo says she's been missing before. Don't worry about it. And it's like,
she probably went to Australia, not Albania.
Yeah. What are you talking about? A month?
I don't know.
Nice that she can just take a month away from work, I guess, without asking.
As we know, I mean, just because you're an adult doesn't mean that, like, you know any better. As we see over and over in these stories.
Pop in, be like, hey, still on vacation.
Nope, not possible. Month. Not possible. Yeah. All right. Well, great chapter with the Weasleys. We're about to go to the Quidditch World Cup, I think.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I think so.
All right. Well.
All right.
Until next time.
Wand.
Ready.